everybody, welcome back to the After 90 Minute Podcast, episode 8, with your host, Graham Fisher, local soccer academy owner and professional and former professional. We're back with my guy, Mateo Reyes. How you doing?
I'm back, man. I'm excited.
This is like our third pod this week, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy, bro.
And it's a rainy day. Session got canceled.
Yeah.
We're with also two special guests. Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. We have Taylor Evernden and Travis Gaudet from ORKA Performance. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much. How you guys doing?
Finally got the invite.
Finally got the invite. No, we've been trying to get these guys on for 5 months now. No, welcome, you guys. I want to hear the story. First of all, we have to talk about how me and Trav grew up, or me and Tay grew up playing footy, hating each other. Let's be real. You don't know the story, Tay. We used to play against each other, me and this guy. He was a year older. He was just kind of this guy that I knew how to kind of press his buttons a little bit, no?
Yeah. Sure.
And we know, have you seen Taylor play in a game?
No, I just heard about the cards.
Because he's a nice guy. He's pretty relaxed, but this guy has a little bit of a temper when he plays.
I've calmed down though as I got older.
Have you?
That's the thing. I don't have a single yellow card this season. Last season I got one, so that's pretty good for me. That's pretty good.
That's improvement.
I feel way more mellow on the field.
Because I remember just be like, oh, we're playing this guy's team. I'm gonna try to press his buttons.
Yeah. It was pretty easy to do, yeah. And
then we re-met during Foothills, right? Foothills PDL, and that's where I met you, Trav. So you guys were both sports performance leader. This is what, 2017, 2018,
yeah,
Trav?
Pre-COVID.
Would have been 2016.
2016.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys met each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then just after that, you started Evernden Performance.
Yeah.
Which then you later rebranded as ORKA Performance.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that and how that all started and what ORKA stands for.
Yeah, I think, it's been a journey so far. I think back in 2016 when we were with the PDL team, I think at that point I knew I wasn't going to be there long term as director of sports science, and kind of thought I would find something temporary until I landed back in pro sport and tried to carve that path. And it started out with just training a couple Irish dancers. That was it. I had
Irish dancers.
2 Irish dancers. Those are the first athletes I trained after Foothills. And so then ended up in their academy and landed a spot in the Southeast to rent a gym called 2110 Fitness. And then I convinced those guys to let me train some teams. So that's when Calgary Rangers came in from the 03s down to the 06s. Okay. So there was 8 teams there. And then within probably 2 weeks from that, Blizzards reached out to chat about that. And I knew I didn't have space, so we had to find another one. I cold called Ross McCain out of the Edge, went up to the Edge school, started running sessions there. And then kind of within a 6-month window, we were up to about 30 to 31 teams out of the Edge, basically just me and Trevor Bartoli, who was the first staff member. And then when we got to that point, I kind of knew that I wanted it to be my full-time job, and I was going to dive in head first. And at that point, I knew I needed to rebrand and get my last name out of it. And so, basic quick story on the rebrand was I knew I wanted a K in the name. I knew I wanted a K. Why? Because I remember listening to a podcast way back in the day, and they said that the K sound is memorable for the human brain. So
just hits hard.
That's why Kodak, Coca-Cola, all those companies have a K in it. So I knew I wanted that. I knew I wanted it to be Old Norse. Yeah. And so I actually pulled up the Old Norse dictionary, and I remember going line by line on it all. And then I saw the word ORKA, and I went to the definition, and it said the strength, power, and energy to do work. And I knew right away that was it.
That was the one.
I landed on it. It was instant. I tried 10 different iterations before that, and then at that point, I knew that was going to be the name.
Did you regret calling it Evernden? You probably didn't know that it was going to be that big.
Yeah.
And then you kind of outgrew, because that's the big. That was the biggest thing, right? Where, if for example, for one up, if I called it after myself and I wasn't leading a session, the players would be like, oh, I thought this was Graham's Academy. Is that kind of what you were finding and why you decided to rebrand?
A little bit, yeah. I think that, and I should have known right off the bat when I was growing up and a telemarketer would call me, it'd be, hello, is Mr. Taylor ever, and they couldn't say it. So it was a difficult name to pronounce.
Yeah.
And people got it wrong all the time. And I knew, like I said, I knew hopefully it was going to grow and I wanted my name out of it. So just decided to rebrand.
So you're obviously industry leader in the city for sports performance, but then you you kind of took your next step with this guy, Trav, my physio. We've had some times, huh? We told the story already of, remember I told the story about me breaking my ankle? I saw this guy 3 times a week for months and months. I remember one time though, it was probably one of my darkest days ever. So I just got like, I was just weight bearing.
Yeah.
And I remember Trav, he's like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. But first you just have to do 15 calf raises. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And he wasn't even looking. It was kind of just like a preempt, like just like a first step check. I couldn't lift my heel for one. You remember that?
Yeah.
Like a centimeter.
Yeah.
And I remember your face. You're like, what the? And I was like, bro, this is bad.
Yeah.
Well, we got there.
We got there.
You got me back.
Yeah.
Played 90 minutes yesterday. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, tell us about how you guys kind of came together and the idea behind that and how it's helped you guys grow so much.
Yeah, I think Travis was with Foothills PDL team as well. So he was a physio. I was a strength coach, and that's where we first met. And at that moment, I knew right away he was a brilliant physio, and I started to send athletes to him. He would send athletes back on the mid and end stage stuff. And
love at first sight, huh?
yeah, it was great. And I knew deep down that was a path that I think that we should take with ORKA, was get that in there. And it was pre-COVID, and how it kind of, the first rendition was I went into Panther Sports Medicine and brought my basement gym equipment into their facility and started training athletes and doing it that way. And it was good at the time, but then COVID hit. I loaded all my equipment into the truck. Everything was shut down. We went online. And I think that's where Trav and I were able to sit down and really plant some seeds on what we think could work for this city. And that's where it all really started. And then 2021, we probably late 2020, we brought Trav up to the Edge, and he was treating a couple nights a week up there. And then again, more seeds were planted, and then I think we finally came to an agreement that we were gonna go together on it. And I
just send it
wholeheartedly to this day. I don't think there would be another person that I would go on this journey with other than him. He's one of the most brilliant physios, and you know what he's built in the rehab space for athletes in the city, and his clients are brilliant. So that was really kind of how it landed in that position. But it's been a whirlwind, so I might be telling a completely different story. Is that?
No, you're pretty bang on. I think I was at the point with COVID where I came from like a traditional big box physio clinic. And Fish, you had some treatments there and stuff like that. And we booked you in literally at the end of the shift so that there would be nobody else in there to give you and I more time to kind of work together.
Yeah.
Right? But COVID, I applied to a job in Kelowna, and me and my wife were going to move legit to Kelowna, pack up. And then when we started talking and started to iron stuff out, I was like, okay, there's nothing here like what I want, but we can create something.
So at your old employers was sort of like an outdated form of treating.
I mean,
not there's a right or a wrong, but
definitely like rehab's intricate for sure, and I don't think there's to say it was right or wrong is one thing. I just think that it was a time thing. It was a time and volume thing, and I think to give athletes where I had a special interest the attention they deserve, you can't do it in 10 or 15 minutes competently.
Yeah.
And when you look at re-injury rates and all these different things, it's one of the reasons behind why that remains an issue, I think. So, yeah, it was just a time thing and a volume thing and space and facility too, right? How do you get somebody like you're going back to running or changing direction or trying to get some touches on the ball? How do you do that in a 10 by 10 cubicle, curtains pulled, right? So.
Well, I have to say, guys, honestly, it's been such a pleasure to see your guys' journey. I've seen it from the start, and I think obviously Taylor with you on the sports performance side, seeing you start with your teams and like train so many players and help so many players go on to the professional game. I think it's been absolutely fantastic. But I think adding the Trav dog in there and kind of completing it with the physio side, it's been unreal to see. And I think the really exciting step was the facility. Mm-hmm. And that it's been what, a year?
Year and a half now.
So and this is just around the time that you came, Trav, or like 6 months later?
I was there. I joined Tay in June. I started doing like 1 day a week up at the Edge School for Athletes. That grew to 2, 3, 4. to the point where I could I was still working my shift at the other facility. So I do 8 hours there. I come up and do about 4 or 5 with Tay. My wife was pregnant at the time. She stayed with me, thank God, but she thought I was absolutely crazy. But we were there June, July, August. We added in a couple part-time physios.
Yeah.
And then opening day for rehab, I think, was November 12th, and then performance was the week after. So I was on for 4 or 5 months, and then we had the facility from there.
Tell us the facility grind, because I was in and around like my ankle, kind of like the second year rehab when you were planning it. You would mention it to me kind of like under wraps, and then I know like I remember coming in pretty soon after it was open. What a grind, huh?
It's been it's been a journey. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything for sure, but when people think a facility is just something that, you know, you can operate your business out of, and for us, we saw it differently. We wanted it to be a space that wasn't just ORKA, but a space that athletes, both young and old, can come in and find their passion with their sport and find their why. And so that made all the mundane things with the facility make sense for us, like cleaning the toilets, mopping the floors, all the stuff that you don't think you have to do was all worth it because we saw the athletes come in and they had that environment, they had that space.
Yeah.
It was just perfect, and we're continuing to evolve it. It's grown so much since being in that facility, and for us, it's all about the athletes, without a doubt.
And it's cool to see, because I know, Taylor, I don't want to say specialize in soccer and footy, but it's obviously like a big part of it, training so many footy teams. You contribute some of the growth to just how big youth sports is growing as a whole, and especially soccer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's massive. I mean, it's absolutely massive. You look at soccer, just soccer, and we built a business off of that at the start, and it's huge. And I think the one thing that continues to make it grow is that we're starting to tie in the really important research on injury reduction and injury prevention, and tying that into obviously moving really well, being strong, and having a well-rounded program with training volume modification, things like that. Stuff we'll get into, I'm sure, with Teo here in a bit. But I think just how people have grasped that concept of, obviously people want to train more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, there's going to be a kink in that hose and they're going to get injured. So now they're starting to think of like, okay, how can I keep training without getting injured? And then obviously strength and conditioning is the first place people go, for the most part. So I think that's where it kind of grows a lot. And I'm sure it's the same with One Up as well. Like, you've had the experience as a player, right? It's what brings you back to One Up all the time?
Just the environment, and because I always have fun, and I know that I can enjoy my time when I'm training with One Up.
See, you have fun. That's the best part. And for me, it's like, I say to parents all the time, the scholarships, the pro contracts, all that stuff is bonus. But if we have an athlete that's, finishes their career 35, they turn 40, they turn 50, and they still love being in the gym, and they still love picking up a weight and maintaining a healthy lifestyle, we've done our job. We've done our job. The contracts, all that stuff is a bonus, and it's about planting that seed of giving that enjoyable training environment. And I mean, your guys' slogan, enjoy the process, that's exactly the way it should be.
Well, before we move on, I just want to ask, of course, like running a business is much harder than it looks to other people. So what was like the biggest bump you had, or the biggest roadblock you had before really like making it one of the biggest like physio businesses in Calgary?
I think for me, it's the little things that add up, just the continuous mistakes that you'll make, whether it's your branding, whether it's your processes, your systems that you set up, and you're constantly trying to not recreate the wheel, but refine things and sharpen the sword, because you'll always make these little mistakes along the way. And as long as you learn from them, then business becomes a little bit easier. But I think as you grow, the problems just are the same, just on a bigger scale. So that's my piece. But I don't know about you, Trev. You're into
I'd say for me, it's nothing like pertaining to the facility or business. It's balance. That's the biggest problem that I think even moving forward will be the biggest struggle. And I know him and I talk about it a lot. I'm sure you can appreciate a fish running One Up, but like last year, you look at last year, I have a little guy who's 2 years old, probably made it to 80 bedtimes, right out of 365. You're there cleaning toilets, you're painting, you're doing all this monotonous stuff. And he's young enough where he's not going to remember that stuff. Hopefully, as we get older, you know, I can free up some time, coach him, do things like that. But it's just finding a balance between trying to build this successful business and fix all these problems that come up every day, with also balancing personal life, family, taking time for yourself to work out, keep yourself healthy. That's the biggest thing for me.
What are you guys talking about? Running a business is very easy, simple.
Cruise control.
Cruise control.
Right?
No.
No emails in the morning.
No emails. Yeah, no emails, nothing. No, even us today. And I'm happy you said that with just putting out fires, because I don't think now, like, once you grow, a day goes by without putting out fires. I think we were 15 minutes before we started this podcast. We get a call. Shout out Kevin. Hey, Martino. Kevin's on our way. We got rained out, so we moved indoors. So Kevin took our Hyundai, which has all our equipment in it, to renter. Locks the keys in the car. So we're 45 minutes before our session starts, and the locksmith's ETA is an hour. So, but you just have to maneuver. We figured it out. We use some of the school's equipment, and is it top notch in the certain specific moment? No, but you always figure it out. And I agree with you. It's just the problems, they come more and more and more, but you kind of just adapt and you just learn how to run with them, no?
Yeah, I think it's about how you frame it too. If you have, you know, things that are popping up, staff that are having issues, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, oftentimes it's a good thing because they're trying something, or they're trying to push something forward, or they're having open conversations that can lead to change. So I think those are the pieces that the fires you learn from them. And sometimes it's you learn that you need to go this way or you go that way. So that's the good way about them for sure.
It's a funny balance out between a coach or a physio and a business owner. And Tay, we've had so many chats just about business in general. Tay was actually, you were one of the first guys I spoke to. Remember that? I went for a coffee to speak about
mahogany.
Yeah, mahogany analog. Just I had the idea of one up. And I just wanted to bounce a couple things off you, and we've definitely kept in touch over the years and appreciate each other's sort of advice. But it's a different beast when you're in business mode all day and working with that. But I think once you get to the pitch, it becomes a little bit easier, no? And it's kind of like it's almost like a relief, like a little bit of a mental break.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll always coach because it is that break.
Yeah,
I'll always have 2 or 3 hours in a day
100%.
that I can coach, and it's that break from the computer. It's the break from the tasks you don't want to do, and it allows you to go back into those tasks fresher, and it allows you to make sure that the connections are being made on the gym floor, and people are having a good experience, because that's at the end of the day what it's about. So
my guy Teo here, he's not just a personality, he's an absolute baller of a footballer, a keeper. Yeah. Teo, he knows his football, he loves his football, and you like to train a lot, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely do like to train a lot. At my age, or personally for me, I can't really tell when I'm overtraining or not. We might speak a little bit more into that after. But I really don't know, because it's confusing for me. Sometimes I feel like I have to go to training. Maybe it's like a big team thing. It really varies, because I know a lot of other kids, a lot of other my teammates would say something different. 100%. I know that for a fact. Yeah.
I think it's a massive debate, a current debate for sure. I like to put it as dedication versus overtraining, and the really fine line between that, because you see so much media and so much just information and motivation, like train every single day to achieve your goals. I actually saw a clip today of this girl from England. It was like a reel, and she's like, hey, like I was playing like in the 4th division in England, amateur, and then I trained every single day for 2 years straight, and she went here and here and here, and now she's playing pro in, I think, Australia. So main question we had for you guys, is the difference between the dedication and the overtraining. I know we've spoken about it a lot, and we try our best at One Up to, because we are supplementary, to really manage that, and we'll go into that a little bit. But yeah, tell us your opinion on the current youth soccer, youth sport landscape, and how overtraining is starting to become a serious issue.
Yeah, what do you see from the rehab side?
Yeah, I guess I can come at it from a rehab lens. So there's a lot to unpack there, I think. And I think that's why there's not black and white answers in regards to load management and what we should do and what we should not do and things like that. There's a lot of differences with development of athletes. So kids who are 12 and under are at a certain stage with maturation. Kids who are between the ages of 12 and 18 are at a different stage, and 18 and over at a different stage too. An example would be like tendon issues. You see tendon issues all the time across all sports, soccer included. And when a boy is developing up until about the age of 14, the tendon itself is maturing, and it's going through a process. So it actually isn't ossified to the bone on the kneecap yet, and it's going to be vulnerable to certain forces and load especially. Once the kid hits 14, 15, 16 and they mature, that ossifies and the tendons mature, can tolerate more loads. Females are quicker to maturation, so they don't have those same issues, but they got another bag of issues there too, right? So I think what stage the kids are at plays a big difference in what they can tolerate. But I agree with you when you talk about dedication too. It's about technical competency, I think, right? Because they can have all the strength and power in the world, even when they're 18, collegiate and pro. But if technically they're not on point, they're not going to express what they do have in terms of muscle power and strength and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think there's got to be a happy balance there between technical training and working on the competency, but also managing load.
Like from my lens as a 12-year-old, I just loved the game so much that, so I try to put myself in like Mateo's shoes, and I'll let Mateo give his lens, but I just always felt at that age I could play footy every day, all day. And I remember like in grade 10, I was with my club, I was with the youth national team program, NTC school program, and I was training like 14 times a week. But I was reffing, like I felt I could do even more. So that's like for me the fine line of players that want more. Like if you take 18 players on a team, is it where half the players maybe with their energy could do more and half not? Or is there like a certain guideline that you would say kind of towards training dosage per week?
It's so hard because training volume is so individual. Like I've seen players that can train, 10 to 15 contacts a week and be completely fine, and they have a passion for the game and they're great. And I've seen athletes that train 4 days a week and they've got issues popping up, right? So it's so individual from that standpoint. I think when you chat on kind of dedication versus overtraining, the big thing that sticks up for me in the through lines is like, there's athletes that train a ton. They train and train and train and train, and they're taking care of the smaller details as well in terms of their sleep, their nutrition, balancing their friends at school, all of these important things that create this ecosystem of what becomes a healthy athlete. And then you have the ones that don't take care of those small details, and they train a ton, and those things catch up. And I think, without getting too complicated on it, you can go into the physiological processes of overtraining and cortisol and all the hormones.
Give us the jargon, Tay.
No, it's one of those things that when you start to understand how the physiology of the human body works, it makes sense. Because if an athlete is in this high stress situation because they're not sleeping, they're not eating right, they're doing everything wrong from a lifestyle standpoint, then their stress hormones are going to be elevated. We got protein synthesis shut off. It affects PGC1, all these different things in the body it affects. And so I think balancing those pieces is the most important. And we always say that to our athletes is your sleep, your nutrition, that's your basement in your house. And you got to think like, what's a basement made out of? Yeah.
Basement's made out of everything pretty much.
Concrete, right? Basement's made out of concrete. And it's made that way because it's strong.
Wrong.
And then you can build the house on it, right? And so all of the smaller details of your sleep, nutrition, all those pieces, that's your basement. And when you got that right, you can build a good home on it.
I think on that too, an overlooked piece a lot when an injury happens and you're suspecting overload or load management issues with an athlete is rehab practitioners on our end don't consider psychological load, right? These kids are in school. You remember what junior high was like, high school, and everything that you're going through at that point too, right? And all of that psychological load is load too, right? And we know it can affect pain and sensitivity and all these different things. So when an athlete comes in, the very first thing we ask them is we'll dive into physiological load.
I remember you did this with me.
But we dive into psychological load.
Yeah, this guy
too.
turned into my psychologist for the first 15 minutes of my appointment. Asking me deep questions.
Yeah. And I think it's a big untapped resource. And if we look at, we talked about creating ORKA and this multidisciplinary clinic. We want an athlete to be able to flow from performance technical training. They get taken care of on the rehab space. They go right back into performance technical training. There's this continuum, just like professional sport. I think a piece that's missing a lot of the time is mental health and mental performance. So it's a huge initiative for us with this year. We've made some strong connections within the city to try to build out some resources and online modules that every athlete who joins our rehab membership or performance membership is going to get access to. So you hurt your ankle, you come in, we assess you, we get you on the rehab membership. You get unlocked these 6 different modules on mental performance, which is going to talk to you about, what does it look like when you lose your team, when you come from a team sport, right? And things like that, and help you through with that psychological portion too.
That's class.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, how do you know, right? And if we speak about like a 14-year-old, someone who's like a bit more mature, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, they can now start to suss out the difference between like, am I injured or am I sore? Am I tired? Am I exhausted? But we also train, for example, One Up, we train 10-year-olds. And obviously their volume is decided by their parents, which is a whole, obviously another bag of issues. We had an episode called Parents versus Kids where we spoke a lot about how the parents push the players in a good direction or they can push the players in a bad direction. So that would be my biggest thing is like, how do you know? So we're going to use Teo as an example, right? Teo obviously loves his football, full of energy. Why don't you talk to us about your, like what a normal week looks like to you, and how you sort of feel energy-wise, and maybe get some advice from the top dogs.
Well, a normal week for me is out of the 7 days, I've probably got 2 days to rest. So I'm doing goalie training. I'm with One Up.
Shout out Summit and Jordy.
Jordan Santiago, my guy. I've also got my club football. And to be honest, I'm never really too tired. I'm never really not that, and I don't really have not enough energy to do something. And like about that dedication part, it's like I play footy and I'm really passionate and I'm training a lot, but I'm still leaving. I'm dedicated because I'm leaving time for school and so much stuff. And yeah, and that's just what goes through my week. And sometimes I might have more schoolwork, and it might get in front of my footy, and I might get a little bit more tired. And it's different every week. Mm-hmm. Can't predict what's gonna happen tomorrow. And
so, on your team at Southwest, there's how many of the boys, for example, train with us at One Up? 5 or 6. So that's a half your team that train with us. Maybe the other half train somewhere else supplementary. But can you see a difference in energy levels between the players on your team? It might be where a player's training every day on his own. Maybe he starts to like think about sports performance. Maybe he's doing like sprints or like body weight stuff. Can you see a difference in sort of energy and morale based on how much they're doing within your team, or is it pretty even?
It's pretty even. I know that there's probably some kids on my team that do like another activity maybe at like 5 o'clock. We've got footy at 6:30, and sometimes they'll come in like a little bit more tired. And that's really the only difference. Is I think there's some players on my team that do weights and stuff, but in terms of energy level between like all my teammates, they look the same. There's not that much of a difference.
If your dad, Pablo, said, hey, you're training every single day, twice a day, what would your reaction be?
No time to rest, bro.
Time to rest, bro. And that's the thing, right? And I know he wouldn't. How much do you think, I'm learning from this, it is kind of like a gray area where maybe you could do more, don't know if you're doing enough. How much of it do you think is whatever sport it is, the club's responsibility, the player's responsibility to manage that and educate players and parents on it?
It's kind of a loaded question, Fish, because there's the debate that athletes don't have access to good resources. That's always the age-old debate, and that's the reason why these injuries are happening and they're elevated. And I don't think that's the case, because there's amazing resources in the city and there's amazing people doing work that's changing the game. And I think it's how we use those resources. And if you look at an athlete that's training a lot, I think as a parent, as a club, as a coach, coaches have coach's eyes. And part of your coach's eye is identifying what that warm-up looks like. And if you start to see athletes not looking the same in a warm-up, then that to me is an opportunity for a conversation of like, hey, how are you feeling? Because I think if you're an athlete 12 and younger, you don't really need any of this subjective wellness questionnaire stuff. It's just how are you feeling and how are you moving?
Yeah.
And I think as long as they're pretty honest with you, you have a pretty good gauge on it. Any athlete 12 and above, there's simple tools that the research have shown to be really reliable. Good validity studies, good studies on them of just a subjective RPE. And they teach that on the Canada Soccer licenses as well in sports science modules. It's what was your stress? What was your sleep? Soreness? How long did you train for? There's 4 questions, and you can start to pick up trends. And even with the League One girls this year with Blizzard, we've introduced weekly jump testing on the force plates where we can test,
See, there's a dip or
neuromuscular fatigue, and try to pick up on trends. And they'll go like this, but then we pair it with the subjective questionnaire data, and it's amazing how well the objective data lines up with the subjective data. And it shows true that clubs and coaches and parents can use these tools that are free and super valuable to get a gauge on where you're at in that week with training. And then you can adjust from there. Maybe you have a different role in training and your coach understands that. That's what makes coaches special, is if they can understand where an athlete is on their journey and how they can adapt their training session and adapt on the fly to make sure that it's player centered.
That's the big one for me, I think, is communication and adaptation. So like for you, I see how good you are, Fish, at athletes that we've treated of one-up, where I have to communicate with you and your coaches. If you know they're doing a lot, you'll kind of get to the root of, well, what are they doing elsewhere and what do I need to adapt within our sessions? But that's you going outside the box and trying to investigate, okay, well, what are they doing with club? What are they doing with X, Y, and Z? And unfortunately, that's not commonplace for everybody to go that extra mile.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same if you have a multi-sport athlete. Let's say they're doing some school sport. They're doing rugby. Like you said, Teo, maybe at 5 o'clock they're doing something and then they're going to soccer after. Is that gym teacher or rugby coach privy to Teo going to soccer at 6? Or is when he's there at 5, Teo's a rugby athlete, and then when you have him at 6, he's a soccer athlete, and nobody's considering any other load that he's going through?
Yeah. That's I speak about this a lot. I was speaking to Teo Afwerk, who was in Germany. He's now in at York 9 at Nuremberg. He was like, I'm training like 16 times a week, but it's under one roof. Everyone's obviously in one club connected, right? So we'll do like a couple gym sessions, and then he'll do a couple individuals and XYZ, but one of the sessions might be very, 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 very light with the ball, because they understand that tomorrow morning he has a session with his team and the day after a game. Going back to my example, where I was doing school program at NSA at Central, youth national team program, club, and this and that, I was going from and I was overtrained for sure. I was going from like a fitness at the school program to fitness, they used to call it, at NTC, to a game all in one day. So did it maybe help me that I was so committed? Yeah, but maybe my development would have been even more if I had kind of started to manage that. And that's where I've learned now at One Up Soccer, because we are supplementary. And I have no issue saying there's a obviously big debate in it, and some clubs would be like, oh, don't go and train extra because you're going to overtrain. But at the same time, it's maybe that club has extra training sessions, or, I've always said this, so many clubs do a fantastic job at developing the players, but at the same time, it's, oh, don't go and train at this academy, but they have no problem calling up a player for a game, even though they've had a game the night before. So it's a difficult one, and I think you just have to manage it and do the best you can for the individual player. And something that we've done since day one, and I know, Taylor, I spoke to you about it, is we actually, for our sessions, for our main program, the program where the players are quite full-time with their clubs, we actually just build them at the end of the month to allow them to have a very fluid reschedule process, whether they're have a club conflict, because we don't want them to miss their club for an extra a session at 1UP, or they're overtrained, or they're tired, or they have a grad, or they have a schoolwork to do. We'll pop them into another session, because I think that is what, if we all work together in that area, that's what's going to get these players to like their highest potential. But it's about kind of having everyone sort of work together.
You know what the biggest problem is? And I'm quite vocal about this, but I'm going to ask Teo a question and see if we can probe into it. But when was the last time you did fitness testing at school? Have you done it before?
I don't think we've ever.
You haven't
do the beep test?
You haven't done
school?
Beep test at school? No. That's good. That's a good answer. I think that's a massive problem in this city, is that as the athletes get older, they hit 14, 15, junior high, high school, we start layering school sports performance, which I'll preface this and say that there's a few programs in the city that are ran really, really well by good people. And it's good because they take into consideration what the athlete's volume is. The others are led by uneducated people in that space. And the programs are blowing volume out of the water. So you're running a beep test, a yo-yo at school. You're doing, a 1RM squat test. This year I heard a 1RM squat test in grade 8, which absolutely blows my mind. And so we have these school systems that are throwing way more volume on these kids, and that's tipping everything. That's tipping everything over. And so until we can get a grasp on what these kids are doing in school from a physical education standpoint, and finding the balance of who are the kids that are in high performance sport and how can we tailor their program at school to make sure that we are supporting their training volume, not taking away from their goals, it's going to be tough to find a solution.
Everybody, I think, is eager to point the finger at the sport that the kid's playing. So even the parents will come in, they'll say, well, is it soccer player? Is it too much soccer? Forgetting the fact that they're going through that in school. And an average junior high and high school athlete is doing anywhere between 10,000 to 12,000 steps a day, just alone. That's outside of training at all, right? So you talk about load, that's all load. Add in the psychological load. It's very different than having an ankle injury and all of a sudden you're an office worker. Not hard to rest then, right? But you're doing 10,000 steps, you got gym class, then training. Now we have issues.
Like my guy Martino over here with the busted up
We're going to
ankle.
get him a new brace.
Yeah, he needs a new brace.
Yeah.
We should have got Travis to treat you on live.
Right? Anyone who can't see Martino's brace, it's massive, has laces, looks like a cast, essentially. So.
Ankles, man. Your circulation. You mentioned League One, Blizzards.
Yeah.
That's an exciting new league for on the male and female side. You are what's your role with them?
Strength and conditioning coach. Yeah, strength coach.
Rocking the ORKA on the jersey front too. Little sponsorship action.
Yeah, I think that was a way that we could contribute to female sport in the city is doing up a bit of a sponsorship for them. Obviously, we put the logo on the training tops, and the girls are coming in. But I think so far, from what I've seen, Diogo and Cedric and Kersey have done a brilliant job with it. And the group that they put together is really, really good. And I had a good conversation with a parent the other day wondering about what the pathway is and why is there AMSL and why is there now League One and AYSL and all these other
acronyms.
All these other SLs. And I think what I've seen out of the League One setup so far is different, because if you look at AMSL, you've played in it, I've played in it. It's really just you come home from school, you're a university player, you take it seriously, but it's not that serious.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're up in Edmonton, you're not like, it's not that serious. And so,
yeah, I went with a team. This is before I went overseas. I think I was 16. I went to provincials indoor, and the coach, this was the AMSL, and the coach was like, okay, boys, if we get to the final, we're still going to go out and not get that drunk. But if we don't make it to the final, like we're going out. And I'm just like, oh my God, like where am I?
It's literally what it is. And so
it's Sunday league.
Yeah, and the schedules don't line up well. I mean, you're playing doubleheader games on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, so that's not good for player health. And what the League One, I think, for me, from a sports science standpoint, has done really, really well is they've set up the schedule well. And the clubs have given these players an opportunity to have consistent, good training, good resources. So, I mean, with the League One girls, we're doing weekly jump testing. We're doing monthly hamstring monitoring. We're doing mid-thigh pull, 5-10-5, all these different tests. And we're doing that so that we can start to collect data and determine what works from a periodization and scheduling standpoint. And I'm a big fan of it so far. I think they've done a great job getting people out to their games, and it's a good team. So
plus, life's good when you're top of the league, huh? The ORKA effect.
Us in St. Albert, it's close. It's close.
I like what you said there about data. I think that's something that, for me, kind of keeping an eye on you guys, something that makes you different is that everything you guys do is very data based and very evidence based and numbers. I remember even going to see you guys and testing my calf strength and my hamstring strength and my quad strength, whatever it is, to make sure that my ankle was healing properly and the mobility. So is that something that you think makes you guys different here in Calgary?
I think to an extent, and for now, I think what we implement from a sports science standpoint, the pricing of it is coming down enough that it should and hopefully will become commonplace across all facilities that are treating everybody, not just athletes. I think it's been available in professional sport for a long time, and there's no reason that everybody else shouldn't have access to it. How those pieces of tech are used and interpreted, I think, will be what sets companies apart. But again, it's just an opportunity for a conversation, right? I think as an athlete, especially, you go in and the physio pushes on your leg and says, "Oh, well, you're weak." Well, you're like, how weak am I?
Yeah.
Right? And if you go do 2 weeks of calf raises and you're doing your stuff and he pushes again and says you're weak, you're like, well, did I improve at all? Right?
Yeah.
It's just, there's no data, there's no numbers, it's not black and white, it's gray. And I think a lot of things can get missed too. You look at knee injuries in soccer, and a test they used to do is called manual muscle testing. They'd push on the leg and the other person would extend their leg for their quad, test quad strength. Well, anybody with half a quad muscle is going to be able to beat the therapist, hopefully. It's a massive muscle, right? But then we test those same people on these dynamometers, and all of a sudden they have 30, 40% asymmetries. And we wonder why the re-rupture rate with ACLs is 30%. 1 in 3 go on to re-tear, right? So I think it's not new. It's been in professional sport for a while, and I think that's the gold standard. And it's good to see it trickle down through. And again, it gives you an idea when you're going backfish for your ankle, right? There's no doubt in your mind that you're ready because you know your strength's there. You know, these are my numbers. You're not just the calf, the hip. Your jumps look like this. Your running looks like this. It's black and white for you.
I think, that was massive for me, just seeing those numbers. And I think my healthy leg, my healthy hamstring was weaker than the one that hasn't been working. So it's just interesting to see overall. Yeah. So what's next, guys? What's going on with you guys next couple of years? Just kind of steadying the ship? Or you guys got plans?
I think steadying the ship. I think Trav has done a brilliant job in creating this ORKA education pathway. He's built one of the best ACL mentorship experiences I've seen in my career so far. So he's full steam ahead on that, and Plint the Podium for us is a big weekend where physios and strength coaches, therapists come from all over Canada now. And this Plint the Podium in November, we got 2 coming up from the States. So we're starting to spread in that education space, and that's going to be a big focus for us heading into 2024. And from there, we don't fully know. We got a few things in the works. They're under wraps right now.
Can you tell us any of it? Under wrap. Top secret, huh?
That one's top secret.
An exclusive.
That one's top secret. So
okay, we'll get you guys back.
We'll go back on when we announce that.
I think we're in the midst of renovating upstairs at our facility. A lot of people
I saw that.
It has a main level, and we got stairs built there now. Upstairs is getting renovated, so that'll be an expansion of the space that's there. And we added some brilliant members to the rehab and performance department this year. So I think our team is very, very strong moving into 2024. And again, some of these initiatives like nutrition and mental health and these resources we want to build out for our athletes and have that there as an add-on. It's not something extra you pay for. You don't, well, if you pay this, you get this. If you pay this, you get this. No, you come under the roof, you're rehabbing with us, you get access to everything. Right? There's too many clinics out there that's, Graham, you got a tendon issue. Well, you want shockwave, it's an extra $50, right? And then they're trying to sell you that. Or if you want needling, it's 20 extra bucks, right? No, it's all included. You're in professional sport, you go in the facility, you lay down, you get everything. So,
love it. We'll keep grinding. I'm excited to see what happens in the next couple of years. Thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been a good one. Learned a lot. And yeah, Tay, I'll let you sign us off.
Good pod, man. Now I won't. Now I know where to go if I get hurt.
We got you, Tay. We'll take care of you, buddy.
I'm always getting like hurt in my leg. I don't know, man. It's crazy.
We got you.
Well, third podcast this week.
Third one this week. Yeah. Episode 8's done.
Yeah. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Ciao.
guys.